Morning. My name is Prasun Dewan, and I get to present this paper. I will introduce my co-authors when I talk about the specific topics on which they worked. Let me start by trying to explain what we mean by awareness of unseen work. It involves one or more actors whose work is of interest to one or more observers, and the work is not directly seen by the observers. Instead, it is logged, abstracted, and then visualized to provide observers with an awareness of the information of interest. So we can define awareness as visualization of an abstraction of work of possibly a large number of distributed actors not directly seen by the observers. And in this paper, the task is a homework assignment involving concurrency done by students, and the instructors are the observers. The assignment was offered as part of a required course on object-oriented programming, which followed the data structure course. Students programmed in Java using the Eclipse programming environment, and they were offered JUnit tests to check their work. The course was offered this summer, so the pace was much higher than in a regular semester, and this assignment was equal to really 3 semester assignments. As a result, it covered a variety of topics in both sequential programming and concurrency. The concurrency topics included thread creation and implementation, synchronization to ensure mutual exclusion, and coordination to manage thread interdependencies. The question we are trying to answer in this research is, what kind of awareness and associated tools can provide potentially useful information about work on a concurrent assignment? Our most basic awareness mechanism is based on the notion of an assignment rubric graded manually or automatically. From each rubric, we calculate the score the student achieved on each topic of interest. And from this abstraction of their work, we create visualizations that we call concurrency-centered. And these were designed and implemented by Sam. Here is an example of such a visualization. Each circle here represents a separate student, and its size is proportional to their concurrency score. For each topic, we create a separate visualization. So we have 4 topics of interest here. The x-axis is always a fraction of the total score of the student. So the more right you go, the higher the total score of the student. What is plotted on the y-axis depends on the metric of interest. And here the metric is the topic score. And we see in the sequential programming plot a linear relationship between the score on sequential programming and their total score. And no one student really did badly with sequential programming. Things are a little different for the concurrency topics. Everyone did threads perfectly. And almost everyone did synchronization and coordination also perfectly, except that A and B did really badly with synchronization, and A, C, and D did really badly with coordination. So we see here, based on the small sample size, that synchronization and coordination in our assignment makes the spread more extreme. And 2 questions that arise here are, did the low-scoring students, A, B, C, and D, seek instructor help? And were the perfect scores a result of instructor-provided help or independent work? Piazza was the tool we used for asynchronous forum help. And using a Piazza client, Bowen and Howe created a semi-automatic tool that found for each student the number of posts the student made on each topic of interest. And from this information, then, of course, we could derive concurrency-centered visualizations for this metric. Here's what we find from these visualizations. There were indeed some students, in particular F, who achieved a high score, but also made a lot of piazza posts. Of the low performing students, only D asked for some help, and that too for sequential programming and not coordination, with which they actually struggled. So maybe these low performing students made a lot of office hour visits. This course was offered during the pandemic, so Zoom was used for office hour visits. Using audio transcripts of these visits, Bowen and Howe built a tool that semi-automatically determined for each student how many office hour visits they made for each topic. And this information, again, was visualized. Now, in comparison to face-to-face interaction, Zoom is supposed to reduce communication. But here we see, by recording these visits, it's able to provide awareness information that we wouldn't have been able to get otherwise. The story we see in these plots is very similar to the one told by forum posts. High scoring F made not only many posts, but also office hour visits. Of our low scoring group, B is the only one who made an office hour visit, and that had to do with coordination and not synchronization, which is the topic with which they struggled. So our next question is, did these low scoring students struggle on their own trying to get the J-unit tests to pass? To answer this question, we had to instrument both the Eclipse programming environment and the J-unit testing framework. Ken extended an existing Eclipse logger called Fluorite built at CMU, and Andrew built a J-unit test logger. The output of these two tools was used to determine the time spent on improving the score of a test on each topic on average. And this information was then visualized. What we see here is that the low scoring students had lower than average test times for all topics. And these low test times seem to hurt them more with the advanced concurrency topics than with threads or sequential programming topics. So maybe the moral we take from this slide is that low effort hurts synchronization and coordination more. Time to wrap up. So we've seen that unseen work on a concurrency assignment can be divided into 4 different topics. This work can be characterized by many dimensions. The ones in italics I did not get a chance to talk about, but they are discussed in the paper. The characterization depends on the use of certain tools by the actor. Different algorithms are used to process the tool data, but they all use a common visualization to present the information to the observers. And we've seen that we can answer a variety of questions based on these data regarding the topics on which students worked, the aggregate performance of the students, and the individual student effort and results. And of course, there are many directions for future work. One question is whether our intertopic findings are replicated in other classes on concurrency. Another question is whether there's any correlation between the various dimensions of awareness that are presented. We found none, but a larger class could find some correlation. And our awareness information was determined after the course was over. It'll be interesting to see whether we could use incremental information about the student work to help struggling students and offer them unsolicited help. Of course, more information is presented in our paper, and you can contact me at this email for more details.